Hey, what's up everybody? Ramey here, and today we're talking about is the depth of a squat rack. You're curious about which depth you should get, why there are different depths, and how do they even measure it. So the rack that I'm in right now is a 24-inch depth rack. What does that mean? That means from the inside to the inside, right here, is 24 inches. If I take the uprights, because they're each 3 inches, that means this rack is really 30 inches total. But this is a 24-inch depth rack. So the inside to the inside, if I were to measure it with my tape measure, inside to inside, 24 inches. All right, so why do I have a 24-inch rack? And you'll see if you start looking around on different websites, there's like 30 inches, and you even see 16 inches and 40 inches and all these different rack depths. So let's talk about why did I choose 24? What's the minimum you should get, and why do you get bigger than that? All right, so first of all, the minimum rack depth that you should look for this way is 24 inches. Now, why do I say that? 24 inches is the minimum that you're gonna really be able to do squats and bench and other exercises inside this rack. The reason that you'll see shorter depths like 16 or 12 is because someone's making a half rack. They're not gonna be doing squats inside a 16-inch depth rack. You'll also notice, for those of you getting safety spotter arms, like the arms, let me just show you them for those of you that aren't familiar. If you're getting safety spotter arms, you'll notice that in general, the normal depth of them is 24 inches because that's the depth most people need for squat and bench. It's 24 inches. So it's a good depth. Now, if 24 inches is a good depth for squat and bench, and it's comfortable, I feel good in it, why would anyone get bigger, like 30 or 40? Rogue has like, what, 43-inch depth? So why would you get bigger than that? Okay, so the reasons that you would get bigger than that are a few. So the first reason you'd get bigger than that is some people just like more space. Me personally, I'm not a huge guy. I don't need more. This is way more than enough. I could use less than this. This is way more than enough for me. Now, some people just feel a little cramped in 24 inches. They want bigger. That also means that you have the room and space for 30 inches or 40 inches because the more depth the rack takes up, the more room in your whatever room, basement, garage, or whatever that you have your rack in, it's going to take up. So space is a huge consideration as well. Next reason you might want a bigger rack. So if you have two people working out at the same time, or you're doing some kinds of supersets, like one person's working out in the rack, one person's working out outside, having a larger space between those two people is nicer. So that's where like a nice 40-inch rack comes in. The other reason that you might want more depth is as you go deeper, like the Rogue 43-inch rack, you actually create a square out of your squat rack. What does that mean? It means that you can actually do exercises like on any side of the rack becomes a square. So there could be some advantages to that. But overall, this is really a preference thing. The rack depth is preference. Minimum 24 inches, maximum you'll see is, you can make racks pretty deep if you want to, but in general, Rogue is 43, which is pretty much the biggest. You can actually see my rack. So the way that I have my rack set up is actually a 6-post. And when I add all the posts up, the depth between these right here, this is 12 inches, this is 24, plus 3 is really 39 inches between all of these in depth. But the reason I have this in the middle, it allows me to basically do exercises from the middle without having to go all the way to the wall. So it kind of like is a good break for myself. So that's one of the reasons I pick the depth that I have. But overall, a 24-inch rack is absolutely 100% perfect for everything I do, for bench and for squat, which are the main exercises I do in the rack. I also sometimes do deadlift, overhead press, other things in my rack as well. I can do all of them just fine in 24 inches. So it's really a matter of your preference. So there's no like right or wrong answer if you get 30 or 43 or 24 or whatever you decide to choose. I think the biggest considerations are how much space do I have in my house? How much space do I want this rack to take up? And what do I actually think I want to do? Some of the other considerations that you might want to think about, if you only have a 24-inch rack, you'll notice mine's a 6-post, but it's a little easier to tip over more depth, like the Rogue 43 inches is going to be a little harder to tip over. Obviously, mine being a 6-post, that's not something I have to worry about. But those are some of the things that you're going to consider when you're getting a depth. So what depth do you prefer? What depth do you have? Let me know in the comments later on.